while I say product manager, I'm not the person actually building it. It's the designers, the engineers, the QA, and the building happens through a different setup altogether, right? But the ownership of building it happens on the PM. So you need to understand that as a PM, you don't have authority over the people who are actually getting the job done. So how do you have responsibility of something, not the authority? That's a very interesting part of the PM role. It's part of most of my interview questions as well. I ask people, what is their secret sauce? Everybody has their own secret sauce to make it happen.
Hello, sir. Thank you so much for joining us today. Welcome to a... Sorry?
Call me Abi, by the way.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So welcome to a one-on-one session with Thought Leader by Seekho. Seekho is the first micro-learning based community wherein you can learn just about anything you want to in a minute. In short, it's a world where knowledge meets seekers. So today we're honored to have with us Mr. Abisheks Journey, who's a product director at Goodera, a software as a service company enabling CSR, volunteering and sustainability. A Stanford graduate, Abhishek's been an entrepreneur with a vast experience in product management. So Abhi, would you like to take it forward and just share with us your journey and where you come from?
Sure. So the Stanford was a small course. I wouldn't call it a Stanford graduate, definitely. It's a mistake for my part. I've been building products for the past 10-11 years. Before that, I was a telecom engineer. I used to work for Nokia Siemens in Bombay, taking care of Airtel's network. Before that, I was a developer. So I've gone through a few career shifts myself. So I kind of understand what it takes to kind of shift through roles or options. That's definitely been a huge part of my role. I've stuck to the product management domain for the past 10 years. God knows how long it lasts for, let's see. I finished my bachelor's in Chennai in engineering, went abroad for a master's in telecom. I came back to India for a year, worked in Bombay for a year, and then took a little break for a bit. So I want to give it a small change after engineering. I want to move over to telecom. So I was trying to figure some things out. When I moved back to Chennai is my hometown. I moved back to Chennai. And I came across this startup called Freshdesk at that point in time. A very small startup with 20 people. I met the founder. I wasn't sure of what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to move into tech. I had a few options in my head of what kind of careers I will take up. We had a good conversation, went really well. We liked each other a lot. And at that point, I asked him to, I said, give me petrol money. You want to pay me a salary? Let's see what works. Where it goes. Let's see where it goes. He was kind enough to give me actual salary, more than what I asked for. And we tried different things. I tried BD for a while, tried something for a while. And through 3 months, we both realized that product was something that made sense. And they said, let's try that out and see where it goes. I tried, it worked for both me and the organization. It clicked. So it's been about 3.5 years in Freshdesk, building out it's Freshworks now, then Freshdesk, then building out the Freshdesk product itself. And then I worked for this company called Math Street Den. I moved to, at some point Freshdesk became a little too big for me. 500 people seemed a large enough number. So I wanted to be part of a small setup again. So I joined this company called Math Street Den. They were trying to figure out AI tech in e-commerce. It's been a little less than a year there. And then I moved to this company called Chrysalis. By far one of the most fulfilling jobs I've had. We worked on, it was a very product role, not a tech role. Our product was essentially selling curriculum to schools. So schools, pre-KG to class 5, would use our material to learn math, science, English, and social. So we taught them, young kids, alphabets, reading, all the way to math concepts and science concepts over a period of time. So it was a new challenge for me because it was a mix of both offline and online. So real world
Right.
physical
Mhm.
book and tech that goes with it in terms of apps for parents, teachers, and students. So very fun job because part of my role was around designing book covers, understanding
Okay.
researching curriculum for math and how the lessons flow. I spent over 4 years there. Definitely loved that job. In fact, we had on the whole worked with over 900 schools across the country and improve what children learn in school. So
Right.
we get diversity in thought, diversity in thought process, gender. So make sure they're more holistic learning.
Right.
After 4 years, I had an itch to do my own startup. So I left that and tried starting up in Feb last year. COVID hit in March, so a bad
Oh
time
God.
do a HR tech startup at that point in time. So didn't feel like the right space and time. So I quit that and joined Goodera last year. And over the past year with Goodera, it's been great, and we've been focusing on building, enabling corporate volunteers to give back to the community even in COVID times. So you
Right.
used to work in terms of, say, physical, right? Blood donation, or a clothes donation drive, going to the elderly care home and all that. So people wanted to still give back even though they're stuck at home. They're stuck safely at home. Still a lot of people who need help. So we're trying to figure out how can people give back to the community virtually through in the safety of their own homes. That's what we're figuring out right now. We're building products around that and working with companies across the globe on that
Yeah,
part.
that's wonderful. That's honestly very, very noble and very important in given our times. So thank you for just walking us through your journey. That sounds very exciting and interesting. So moving on, we're just about to enter into our first rapid fire round. So
Sure.
are you ready? All right. So let's begin. If you were to describe yourself in 3 words, what would they be?
Energetic, passionate, kind.
All those 3 qualities came across when you just described your journey. That's brilliant. Moving on, if asked to have one superpower, what would it be?
Sleep at will.
Okay.
So I have a 10-month-old child. So being able to sleep at will is one thing I right now.
Oh, okay. That's difficult as a young parent. Moving on, if you were asked to travel in space and come back, which famous personality would you choose to go with?
Come back. That's a tough one. Honestly, nobody at this point. Yeah.
So you'll just travel alone in space.
I would say who could I travel with?
Yeah.
Okay. My wife, to be honest.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Next question. What one famous quote or book changed the way you look at things?
Famous quote. I think the quite interesting one. The Steve Jobs quote is a good one around change, around the one in the 1984 Apple ad. Have you heard that?
I'm not aware.
People who change the world. There's a whole ad around 84 Think Different. There's a 84 Think Different Apple ad. It's a very long quote, but talks about people being change makers and people being perceived differently is one thing. And the second one is the serenity prayer.
Mm-hmm.
The idea of give me the wisdom, give me the courage to change what I can, accept
Right.
that they are, and the wisdom to know the difference between the two.
Right. That's beautiful. That's a good one. Lastly, one life lesson you learned and you tell almost every other person you meet.
Life is happening right now, so don't focus on the people who are there in your life at this point in time, and not on things that could happen going forward in the future at the cost of.
That's very important. Being mindful in your present is so much that people don't do that most of the times, but that's a good lesson.
Yeah.
Right, now moving on to the swipe left or swipe right section. So if you like something, swipe right. If you don't like it, swipe left.
Like is right and not like is left. Got it. Okay.
Yeah. To begin with, number 1, corporate meeting.
Swipe left.
Yeah, no surprises there. Next, morning coffee.
I'm not a coffee person, unfortunately. I make coffee, but I don't drink it. So I
So
making
are you a chai person?
Actually, I don't drink anything. I make coffee for my wife in the morning, but I don't drink it at all. So I make beverages in general, like.
Okay.
So, but making beverages right, drinking them in the morning, no.
All right. Late night parties?
Left.
Okay, surprising, but you have a child, so makes sense.
I'm too old for it right now. I had my share at this point. I'm done.
Okay. Entrepreneurship?
I've given it a shot. I'm somewhere in the middle right now. I'm not sure as yet.
All right.
But yeah.
Okay. And adventure sports?
Swipe right.
All right. And this one's not there, but I mean, I just wanted to ask dogs.
I have a Labrador, 10-year-old. So
you love dogs?
Double right, if possible. Yeah.
That's one similarity we both share. All right. Moving on.
He's sleeping right somewhere, watching me interview right.
Oh, even my pug's sitting here only, sitting and watching. Okay. Now finally going to the Q&A section. So just to begin with, from working in tech to leading product teams at top firms like Freshworks and Goodera, what has your journey been like?
It's been a lot of learning, to be honest. I think every role I've had has presented new challenges. So when I started off at Freshdesk, very early in my career as a PM, I knew nothing about building products or building software. I learned a lot from Girish, you're the first boss. A lot about both building things and being a good people person or from him. I still remember the after he moved me to the product role in Freshdesk, I remember the first thing he told me is, I'm not going to ask people to. I'm not going to give you authority over people, right? Because authority when given does not work. You need to earn it from people. So something that I hold, and for a product manager especially, is very important because all the people. So while I say product manager, I'm not the person actually building it. It's the designers, the engineers, the QA, and the building happens through a different setup altogether, right? But the ownership of building it happens on the PM. So you need to understand that as a PM, you don't have authority over the people who are actually getting the job done. So how do you have responsibility of something, but not the authority? That's a very interesting part of the PM role. It's part of most of my interview questions as well. I ask people, what is their secret sauce? Everybody has their own secret sauce to make it happen. So I had to learn a lot in my first job about gaining influence and making things happen without actually having the authority to make them.
Right.
So that was a huge first few roles. And just understanding when you're the first PM, everything seems a big problem to you. Everything seems important. Everything seems broken. From there, how do you figure out what's important? Actually, yes, it's broken, but not as broken as something else somewhere else. So that's figuring out prioritization, figuring out the influencing without authority. Few things that I carry forward a lot, and I'm managing people. It was a very kind environment in Freshdesk. The first 400 people when we were there, it was very collegial. We were all a family. We knew we were in it together. I didn't see any politics. There was no bad blood and all that. So it was a very positive space to work in, and it influenced me a lot in terms of how I approach workplaces. Also, it's about the work, all in it together. There's no point in taking one down or putting
exactly
up.
Right.
About let's figure it out together. Let's work together. We're in it together to get it. And at the end of the day, all of us together will build something out of it. Till date, I'm very conscious about putting on my resume, I did something, because it's always been for me a collaborative effort to get things done with people. So I carry the culture throughout in Freshdesk. I think, and then for a while I wanted to take a break from tech. That's when I moved to Chrysalis, the education company, and it was a completely different environment because the tech sector has some sense of entitlement.
Okay.
Because you have funding, you have there is I remember room in Freshdesk. We had a table tennis table, we had free lunch. There are all things that came with funding, came the ability to afford those things even when you're not profitable. Christmas was a bootstrap company in the entirety. And in education, it's not a high margin, high revenue. It's a lot harder to get to the same revenue a tech company can. So it's a very, very different setup for me getting used to in terms of budgets, in terms of getting things done, how scrappy you could be. I remember the first time we had to build a POC for a product. I didn't have budget to build the product out. So I rented the office, my old office. I called all my ex-colleagues together. I ordered them pizza. We had some over the weekend. We hacked a prototype together to show investors what we could build. That was like over a weekend. We did something with no money. I figured something out. So we had to be scrappy with those kind of things in what you could spend. So it's a very different viewpoint for me in that challenge, right?
Right.
And then my current job is also. Challenge point of view, it's been great because we're entering a new market. Virtual everything is becoming new right now. You have virtual events companies coming up with their own platforms for StreamYard, for example. I don't know if we would have had this big market many years ago, I'm assuming, right? So idea of doing good virtually, figuring out what it means, has been a challenging. Even though I've built SaaS before, I've been a part of a similar setup before with Freshworks at the same stage and all that. I think the problem domain in the space, and this is the first time I have this much money and I'm at a leadership role. Last time leadership role, I didn't have money. I had to scrap through a lot of things. Funding, we have a potential, and I'm a senior role to make things happen, influence and autonomy point of view. So it's been a challenge. Each time it's been a new challenge for me in that place. So I'm learning a lot every time. I don't think I've gotten to every time I meet somebody new, I'm like, oh my god, they know so much more than I do. How do I learn? How do I figure out how can I meet them where they are with their growth in some sense?
Right. That's beautiful. Right, go on.
That's where it's been for me as the journey.
All right. That's beautiful. You've had different kinds of profiles within product management as well. I didn't know you could have so many different types. So, and the work culture aspect, that's something that I've never heard anyone talk about. And I think that's very, very important. So kudos to you on that. A follow-up from that, in fact, would be that, many firms require PMs who specialize in either tech, growth, user experience or marketing. Now, what do you believe is better, a generalist PM or a specialist?
I think domain knowledge is very important. I'm not denying that. But I think plucking people and pigeonholing them to a domain, I think is not something I am for. I think it's largely been shaped by my experiences as well. I was a no-name PM who was hired when I started. And when I started PM Journey in India, PMs weren't a thing. Now, from my younger colleagues, a PM role, like the data scientist was a little while ago, right? Being a PM is a very lucrative position right now. But I know the luxury of having experienced PMs or hiring experience 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago. We had to look at generalists who had the smarts, who had the. So I think you're smart. Are you ownership driven? Are you have empathy? I think these are things I look for because I can't teach people those things. I can't teach somebody to be empathetic or take ownership or be passionate about those things. Rest, I think people can and should pick up. I've always picked up. I learned pedagogy of children at some point to what age, what works. I had to be expert in that to be able to build a product on that. So I think I would find it boring if I were to be in the same domain throughout my career life. It would be very, very big for me personally. So I'd look for people who can come in and contribute and bring freshness to the role, and not necessarily look for. In fact, this current role is the first time I'm hiring experienced PMs in my entire career.
Okay.
Otherwise, I've never had.
And what does it feel like?
It's different. It's good to have them running, hit the ground running in some sense, but also sometimes you have to figure out fresh perspective, right? In terms of bringing out baggage. So it's important to hire the right kind of people who can bring the experience but not the baggage.
Right. That makes sense. In fact, moving on, what does the PM role look like in a startup? Are they like typically generalists, or do you have more flexibility? What is it like?
I think a lot depends on the stage of the company itself, right? I've been in different stages of startups. A lot depends on not number of employees you have, but where the product life cycle you are
Right.
in. The ideation stage, you haven't found product market fit as yet. You're still figuring out. You have an idea, but it's not found resonance in the market as yet. At that point, it's about being scrappy, doing whatever it takes.
Right.
The processes are not as set. Then you whatever it takes to figure out what is the right product for the market. The items remain. Still do the research, still interviews, it's still writing PRDs, it's still talking to developers, getting things out and all that. But in a very early stage, you're iterating a lot faster. You're building small things that you don't know they'll work or not. Or if you're in an established market, for example, and you know that, for example, Freshworks, for example, is an established market. Support software wasn't a new vertical. So we had other competitors in the market. It was roadmap was fairly easier for us to figure out what the path looks like. Was easier to figure out. But in the current setup right now in Goodera, I have no clue. 6 months back, I had no clue what we're building. Now it's a lot more clarity. 6 months down the line, I'll have a lot more clarity. When I joined the company 8 months ago, we risked an idea. I think much beyond that, right? So I think a lot depends on the stage the company you're in itself, and I think it's important to hire right for that particular stage. Some people are excellent at being structured in their they need structure. They need that scaffolding is very important for them to function and be. So and my wife works. I've worked at MNCs. There, I think having OKRs for every PM or every person down to the quarter level and having that kind of clarity is very important at that level for some people. I've functioned with a lot less information, more chaos than anything else. So in that case, you look for different kinds of people who can function with a level of chaos and lack of information.
Right. Yeah, that's absolutely true. In fact, should an entry-level PM start their career with a startup? Now that you mentioned you starting off, and
I think it depends, right? I think it depends on the personality of the person themselves, right? When you come into a startup, there is no guidebook. There's no rule book on how to be, what to be. I'm very conscious of how I manage my team because I've been in this journey before. But I've reported to the CEO always in every company I've worked with, in my early years, right? I mean, report into the CEO or a very high senior function in the early stage. They don't have time to mentor you at that level at that point in time as yet. They're busy at fundraising and figuring out what the product, customers and all that. So they won't have time to do a structured mentorship program with you. So you have to be scrappy and learn on the go as a fresh PM. So it's very important to not expect anything, absorb, and be able to kind of make sense and forge your own path, right? So you need to be entrepreneurial in your effort to be a PM in a startup in that sense. So I have that quality, and I look for the quality right now when I hire people also in my current role. If you were an MNC, it's a lot more structured. Each level has skills on board. APM has skills. They know what level they expect. What do you expect to deliver? Promotion from one level. What is the benchmark? What are the OKRs this quarter? So there's a lot more structure around your learning and your career growth in MNC organization.
Right.
So I think a lot depends on your personality. I wouldn't say one is better than the other, but and I know right now in hindsight I can look back and say I've never survived in an MNC type environment. It wouldn't work for me because I don't do well when it's that structured in some sense. I need a little more freedom to move around. But there are people I know who work well in that sense. It's good to take a look into yourself and understand what environment brings out the best in you, and then figure out where you might shine better.
Right. Makes sense, absolutely. And as far as product management goes, do you think an MBA or a master's degree can help you grow further as a PM?
No, I really don't know.
Okay, why?
So I think there are two parts to it, right? One, when you hire somebody to be a PM, right? You look for some sort of a business sense, right? What they understand the business really well, they understand the market really well, and we will translate that context of business into what a product or user experience could look like. Okay. MBA to me, and I don't know master's course specifically in product management. I think it's too intense to have a master's course specifically in product management. But MBA is a very generic program. It gives you a larger, broader sense. I don't think it's necessary. I don't think I have ever had an MBA graduate in my team until now, to be honest.
That's very interesting. Why is that so? I mean, is it because MBA is so generalist that you might need some more level of specialization?
No, I just look for I look for qualities.
Right.
I learned from the way I was hired in the first place. My culture in Freshdesk influenced a lot of how I operate. Also, the first job I had, it influenced me in a lot of ways. So there you talk to people, look for a certain attitude, aptitude, and then figure out where they fit. We move people. Actually, I have one MBA person in my team until now. Very short stint though, one MBA. But you look for aptitude, and then they don't work out. You move somewhere else because the smart people. So I've had people who report in product, they moved to some other team, and somewhere else they found that support is the best thing for them. So I think, especially for product specifically, the only reason it might help is because companies look for tags these days, and the reason they do look for tags is because they don't want to take the effort to do
understand or
getting an interview. You get 100 applications, it's difficult for you to figure out who to apply, and having an MBA seems like a easy qualifier or filter of sorts to get to short number. That's the only reason I think people do those. I don't see a value in that. MBA adding value to the role from what you bring to the table, but it might be relevant because some company are looking for it, and you may not qualify if you don't have that as a base degree. So it's more of a compliance in some places, but definitely help you, I think, on the job of the role at all.
Right. And in fact, now that you mentioned that, people sometimes decide to change or move around. So what would your advice be to someone who's trying to switch to product management from other domains?
So I've been one type that kind of switch domains to product management from somewhere else. I've spoken to a lot of people about it recently. I think a couple of things to do is, if you don't have any product experience, is there are courses available these days. It could be the product management specific courses, and these courses, what they end up doing for you is about giving you knowledge, which you can get online or in the books also, but in a structured format where you can consume it easily in some sense, right? So the courses are a good way to build knowledge, not necessarily credibility to the point it will get you a job, it may or may not, but it's good for you to pick up and understand what product management is all about. You look at books or the courses to figure that out. Then I'd say look at building a portfolio of sorts. Try your hand at some problems, solving use cases. Talk to some designer friends that you might have. See if they can help you, or wireframe something for yourself. Right? Look at building some sort of a portfolio for yourself, and reach out to startups, young startups that are looking for talent, because a lot of small startups are looking for right now, they need people. They don't have the credibility or the funds necessary to pay for high profile product manager experienced person. Maybe you could be looking at interns, young people to come in and believe in them and build something. That's an opportunity for you to it's a win-win for both the person and the organization.
Right.
One thing I would do right now if I were trying to break in product management, that's how I would approach it. An MBA is also a way, I guess, because from campuses for PM roles. So that would be one way to probably break into. So changing careers is one reason why we want to do an MBA. It makes, as an experienced person, it may make sense. That's the two things I can think of right now, at least.
Okay. And although you already mentioned the kind of qualities you look for in a candidate for a PM role, is there anything in terms of, let's say, the technical skills or knowledge that you also filter for while, let's say, taking an interview? Or what kind of questions do you typically ask in an interview?
A lot of the PM role is around one is, like I said, the business part, right? Understanding, figuring out what is important. That's one part of it. Second thing is about communication. How do you communicate what's important to who need to communicate it? And third, influence. How you use your influence to get things done without authority.
Yeah.
The three parts I think are very important. So for the business part, I look a lot at problem solving. Your problem solving ability. Are you able to take a complex problem and break it down into smaller parts or portions? So they give you a very abstract question. Are you able to make assumptions? And because a lot of times you don't have information to connect the dots all the time. So you have to rely on some sense of a common sense or some sense of understanding of the world around you to connect. So going from abstract to say discrete is one thing I look for. And then the ability to, like I said, communication is very important. Written communication, verbal communication, very important. Be very clear and detailed in your requirements and expectation. And then the second thing is around communication, because you need to be clear and detailed in what you want to talk to developers or designers about.
Right.
And it's perfectly fine not to have everything in place, but you need to be able to have a clear idea. But when they come back to you, are you able to make decisions and say, you know what, right or wrong is the way I think it should go. So that sense of communication, that's very important. I look for that. And the last piece I told was the ownership, because you need to have the ownership and influence to make things happen. So your personality comes in very important. Being egoless in some sense, very important. So I look for all of that. So that my skill is some portion of it. If you have the experience, I'll ask you for the skill, because the experience, I need you to know you've learned that portion of it. So more of learning is what I look for, that not necessarily the learning part of it. If you're a fresher, I look for mostly around these aptitudes and attitude.
That makes sense. And in fact, when it comes to, let's say, just improving your product, how often do you think product managers should speak to the actual users? And how can PMs ensure a continuous inflow of user insights?
So I'd say, again, this is from my freshest days, because you're working on support ticket at the point in time. We'd be on our product support desk, right? So we have access to all the tickets. So PMs would read all the tickets coming in. Every ticket that came in, we'd know. It got to a point where, you know what, I don't have time for tickets anymore. So let me now read only those which support is assigning to me. So grew to a point there. So I think being on support is a very, very crucial skill for PMs. Actually going to your support system tickets, that's where your customers come who are have issues. They come there very often. So going there, being on support is very important. Talking to your support agents about what they see, what you don't see, sales, pre-sales, CSMs, having contact with them, because they're proxies for you. Because you can't be on every call, but they can distill information, give it to you in some sense. Those two are important. And not all scenarios do you have access to users directly. A lot depends on the product you're building and the context and all of that. So wherever possible, I'd say be in touch with users also, if wherever it is. User point of view, I think support that gives you a huge chunk of constant real-time stream information, and then go back to customers when you have a sense of get more understanding of what you think it is. So clarify. Here's what I understood the problem to be. Am I right? Here's the solution I think I'm having. Will it solve your problem? So get that clarification, get that consensus would be very important on a regular basis. So often, I don't have a weekly, monthly, quarterly thing. A lot depends on the product you work with. Support is an everyday thing, to be honest. You constantly be there. Users, I'd say every time you work on new features, new solutions, make sure you ratify things with them in some sense if you can before going out. And customer calls, the internal team calls, I'd say weekly or fortnightly would be good to have.
Right. Now, speaking of user stories and problems and solutions, what do you think is the best way to convert user stories into technical requirements?
I think the key here is to have an able partner who can work with you on the technical side of things. Because your role, so two things you bring to the table as a PM, right? One is making sure that the solution, so the problem you identify the right problem in the first place, and the solution that you've built is the right solution. Are you defining the problem right? And for that problem is the right solution. Both, I think, are the PM's hands, and very critical get that right. Once you define the solution and say, hey, I need this feature to be built. Here's what I need the user to do. Here's what I need. This is what success looks like, and all that. Then, in terms of tech requirements, it then boils down to your engineering partner. I've been lucky to have had good engineering teams and partners. One of my first engineering partners in Freshdesk, we're still in touch, very regularly, good friends. And for me, he set the bar in terms of what a part of engineering looks like. I don't know, I set the bar across in terms of I'd walk my dog in the nights and call him and say, dude, let's put this, how do you figure this out? What happened here? What happened there? So I built my tech knowledge by working with engineers on the front. So while I have some understanding of what trade-offs to make, for example, so to know customization versus fixed presets versus no customization, what the effort trade-off could be, I have in my head some sense right now. I usually work with the engineering partner to get a better sense.
Right. And now that, in fact, talking about solutions, how do you validate the effectiveness of a solution pre and post the development stage of a product's life cycle?
So pre, there are two ways. There are proxies. Your proxies are people, your customer-facing teams who interact with customers, who aren't customers themselves, but in lieu of the interaction, they have a better idea of the customer mindset in some sense, right? So that's one proxy is one way to verify one thing. Second is customers themselves. So, but the key here is to do a cross-section of customers and not just one or two. To work through that cross-section of customers to make it happen is key. From pre, could be designs, could be your PRDs themselves, but target customers is definitely a pre one way of it. Post, I'd say, is analytics is definitely a key. So you can use analytics in terms of numbers, like conversions, visits, clicks, all that, events, all of that, and also look at segmenting users, because obviously if you look at a larger pattern, may not be reflective of smaller patterns you see, smaller users, say first time users, power users. So then looking at segmentations of users, one powerful thing. Tools like Hotjar that kind of help you do a visual. They record the screen of the user doing the screen. So you actually see them clicking here, clicking there. So that heat map and the user actual recording of the screen, that also gives you a good sense of post what they understood, whether they understood properly or not, and all that. And your metrics definitely is if your intent was to say reduce time taken on the page to a task or improve conversions, then the metrics themselves will speak to you for all of that. If all else fails, talk to the customer again. We lost right now. How do I'm not sure where I figured it out. So that would be a good place to.
That was a brilliant answer. I learned a lot about product management, considering I know nothing. So that was wonderful. And thank you so much. That brings us to the end of this session. And just thank you so much for taking out the time from your schedule for doing this with us. And
I had a colleague of mine who actually posted about this on his LinkedIn profile. That's why I've put you guys. Ajit Saundara, I came a few weeks ago. I think it's great what you guys are doing. Pretty fantastic, because growing up, I never had an opportunity to understand what the different roles were. To understand, do I have what it takes? What role makes sense for me? It's more of a, so that the people I know are doing this, let me figure out what. So I think it's pretty cool that you're exposing this generation to a larger idea of career, so they can learn and grow from that. I think it's fantastic. So kudos to you guys on that.
Right, that's the intention. Thank you so much once again. And you explained everything very simply. I mean, even I understood, and I have zero background in engineering or product management, obviously. So that was wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thanks. That was wonderful talking to you as well.